If you walk out that door, we're done. Charles held up the 4-carat ring she'd just returned. The wedding was in 6 days, but Beatrice had just met the daughter she gave up at 16. Now she had to choose between the life she'd built and the truth she'd buried. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where are you watching from. United States, Canada, Malaysia, UK, Australia, Jamaica. Beatrice Nicholas had practiced her wedding smile so many times in the mirror that it no longer felt like lying. It was muscle memory now, like typing without looking at the keyboard or parallel parking in San Francisco's impossible streets. She stood in the center of the Ritz-Carlton Half Moon Bay's oceanfront terrace, her left hand resting on her hip just so, letting the afternoon light catch the 4-carat diamond that Charles had chosen without her input. The ring was heavier than she'd expected, or maybe that was just her imagination. The ivory linens or the champagne? Her wedding planner, Sutton, because of course her name was Sutton, held up 2 fabric samples that looked identical to Beatrice's untrained eye. The ivory reads more classic, but the champagne has this gorgeous warmth in golden hour lighting. Beatrice touched the champagne swatch, felt its cool smoothness between her fingers. This one. Perfect choice, Sutton made a note on her iPad with her Apple Pencil, every movement efficient and expensive. Charles mentioned you have excellent taste. He said you're the reason his Oakland properties photograph so well. That wasn't a compliment about Beatrice. That was a compliment about Charles's ability to recognize useful skills in other people. But Beatrice smiled anyway, the practiced one, and said, he's generous. The Pacific Ocean crashed against the cliffs below them, salt air mixing with the overpowering scent of the white roses that would line the aisle in 7 days. 7 days until 300 guests watched Beatrice Nicholas become Mrs. Charles Brennan. 7 days until she'd completely erased the girl who grew up in a single-wide trailer in Fresno, whose mother bought day-old bread and watered down the milk to make it last. Nobody at this wedding would know that girl had ever existed. Beatrice had made sure of it. We should check the lighting setup, Sutton said, leading her toward the ceremony space. The AV team is here early, which never happens. Someone's actually competent for once. Beatrice followed, her heels clicking against the terrace stone. She learned to walk in heels during her first corporate job, watched YouTube videos in her studio apartment, practiced until the wobble disappeared. Charles had noticed during their 3rd date. You carry yourself well, he'd said, like she was a building he was considering purchasing. The ceremony space took her breath away despite herself. Rows of white chairs faced the ocean and someone was on a ladder adjusting the positioning of an overhead spotlight. The late afternoon sun turned everything golden, and for just a second Beatrice let herself feel something real. This was actually happening. She was actually getting married. Just finishing up the final angles, the person on the ladder called down. Male voice, familiar in a way that made Beatrice's stomach drop before her brain could catch up. He climbed down, turned around, and the clipboard fell from his hands. Harry Wilson. Beatrice forgot how to breathe. Forgot the wedding smile, forgot her posture, forgot every single thing she'd taught herself in the 11 years since she'd left Fresno and never looked back. Harry stood 10 feet away in a black AV company polo and work pants, and he looked exactly the same except for the small scar above his left eyebrow that definitely hadn't been there at graduation. I'll give you 2 a moment, Sutton said, because even wedding planners could read a room. Neither of them moved, the ocean kept crashing. A seagull screamed overhead. Beatrice's heart hammered so hard she was sure Harry could hear it. He said finally, and the nickname hit her like a physical thing. Nobody had called her that in years. She introduced herself as Beatrice to everyone in the Bay Area, insisted on the full name, buried B along with everything else from her past. Harry, her voice came out steadier than she felt. What are you doing here? Working. He bent down, picked up his clipboard, gave himself something to do with his hands. Anderson Audio Visual. We contract with the Ritz for events. I'm the senior tech now. Senior tech? Harry, who'd wanted to be an EMT. Harry, who'd tutored kids for free at the library. Harry, who'd held her hand during her mom's bad episodes and never once made her feel small for living where she lived. "You look good," he said, and she hated how much that mattered. "You too," Beatrice glanced toward where Sutton had discreetly disappeared. "I'm getting married next Saturday here. I gathered that from the 200 chairs and enough roses to bury someone," a ghost of his old smile. "Congratulations." "Thank you." This was excruciating. They'd dated for 2 years. She'd lost her virginity to him in the back of his sister's Honda. They'd talked about community college together, about both becoming EMTs, about getting an apartment near Fresno State. Then she disappeared to Portland with barely a goodbye, and when she'd come back 6 months later, she'd avoided him completely until she left for San Francisco. "Your mom doing okay?" Harry asked, because he was still kind enough to ask. "She passed 4 years ago," Beatrice delivered it flat, factual. She, cried alone in her apartment, hadn't gone to the funeral, had sent flowers from an online service. I'm so sorry. It's Beatrice now actually, I go by my full name." Something shifted in his expression, not hurt exactly, more like understanding, which was somehow worse. "Right, Beatrice, got it. I should get back to the planning, lots to finalize before Saturday." She was already backing away, already rebuilding the walls, already shoving this moment into the box where she kept everything from Fresno. "Yeah, of course," Harry raised his clipboard in an awkward half-wave. "The lighting will be perfect, I'll make sure of it." "I know you will." Beatrice walked back toward the main building, her heels clicking in steady rhythm, her breathing controlled. She learned that too, how to walk away from things that hurt, how to keep moving forward, how to leave people behind without looking back. But at the threshold she stopped, turned. Harry was back on his ladder, adjusting the spotlight, his movements careful and practiced. He'd always been good with his hands, good at fixing things, good at making broken things work again. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Charles, probably, asking about napkin colors or whether his business partner's +1 could sit at the family table. Beatrice pulled out her phone, but the notification wasn't from Charles, it was an email. The subject line made her knees buckle. "RE, 23andMe relative match, Zoe Elise Morgan, close family match." Her finger hovered over the email. Behind her she could hear Sutton's heels approaching. In front of her the ocean kept its relentless rhythm. And somewhere in that ceremony space, Harry Wilson was building the lighting for a wedding he didn't know was about to implode. Beatrice opened the email. "This story wasn't made for clicks, it was made with heart. I was told that wouldn't be enough to reach even 2,000 subscribers. Maybe that's true in today's world. Unless people like you choose to support stories that actually mean something." Beatrice made it to her car before her hands started shaking. She sat in the driver's seat of her leased Audi, staring at the email on her phone screen, reading the same words over and over until they stopped making sense. "Dear Beatrice Nicholas, you have a new close family match on 23andMe. Zoe Elise Morgan shares approximately 50% of your DNA, indicating a parent-child relationship. Zoe is 13 years old and has expressed interest in connecting with biological relatives. Her adoptive parents, David and Lynn Morgan, are supportive of contact if you're open to it. 50% parent-child relationship, 13 years old." The math was simple and devastating. Beatrice had been 16 when she'd given birth in a Portland hospital room, her Aunt Valerie the only person holding her hand. 16 when she'd held her baby girl for exactly 4 minutes before the adoption counselor gently took her away. 16 when she'd signed papers that promised a closed adoption, no contact, a clean break for everyone involved. That baby would be 13 now, in middle school, probably worrying about algebra tests and whether boys noticed her. Beatrice's phone rang. Charles. She let it go to voicemail, then immediately felt guilty about it. Charles was good to her. He was stable, successful, everything her mother had never been able to provide. He never raised his voice, never showed up drunk, never forgot to pay the electricity bill. He also didn't know anything about Portland, about the pregnancy, about the daughter Beatrice had spent 13 years trying not to think about every single day. The phone rang again. This time she answered. "Hey. How's the venue looking? Did Sutton fix the linen situation? Charles sounded distracted, probably answering emails while talking to her. He was always doing three things at once. The champagne ones, they're perfect. Good, good. Listen, I'm running late tonight. Potential investors from Singapore want dinner, and you know how these things go. You'll be fine on your own. Yeah, of course. Beatrice watched a couple walk past her car, holding hands, laughing about something. Charles, can I ask you something? Make it quick, babe, I'm walking into the restaurant. Do you ever think about the future, like really think about it? She didn't know what answer she was fishing for, only that she needed something from him right now. The future, that's what the prenup's for. He laughed like he'd made a joke. Kidding, sort of. Look, I've got to go, love you. The line went dead before she could say it back. Beatrice sat there for another 10 minutes, watching the sun start its descent toward the ocean. Then she did something she hadn't done in 11 years. She opened her contacts, scrolled to a number she'd kept despite deleting every other trace of Fresno from her phone, and pressed call. Harry answered on the second ring. Beatrice. Can we talk? Not here, somewhere else. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, too high and too fast. Yeah, of course, there's a coffee shop about 2 miles south on Highway 1, the one with the blue roof, you remember those? She did remember. They used to drive to the coast on his days off, find the cheapest diners, split pancakes, and refill their coffee cups until the waitresses gave them dirty looks. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The coffee shop was exactly the kind of place Charles would never enter. Linoleum floors, mismatched chairs, a laminated menu that advertised a senior discount. Beatrice felt something loosen in her chest when she walked through the door. Harry was already there, sitting in a corner booth, 2 coffees on the table. He'd remembered she took hers black with too much sugar. The gesture made her want to cry. Thanks for meeting me, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. You sounded like you needed to. He studied her face in that way he used to, like he was reading a language only he could understand. What's going on? Beatrice wrapped both hands around the coffee cup, letting the heat ground her. This was insane. She spent 11 years building a life that had no connection to Fresno, to her past, to the scared girl she used to be. And now she was sitting across from Harry Wilson, about to blow it all up. I got an email today, she started. From 23andMe, I did one of those DNA kits 6 months ago. Charles thought it would be fun, learn about ancestry, that kind of thing. Harry waited. He'd always been good at waiting, at giving her space to find her words. I have a daughter. I don't know the right tense. The words tumbled out faster now. When I went to Portland. When I disappeared on you, I was pregnant, Harry. My mom shipped me to my aunt's house and I had a baby, and I gave her up for adoption, and I never told anyone. Not even you, especially not you. The coffee cup was burning her palms now, but she couldn't let go. Harry's face had gone very still, the way it did when he was processing something too big for immediate reaction. You were pregnant, he repeated slowly, when you left. 16 weeks along. I didn't know until I was almost 4 months. By then my mom had already made all the decisions. Beatrice forced herself to look at him. It wasn't yours, if that's what you're thinking. It was before we got together, some guy at a party I barely remember. That wasn't entirely true, but it was close enough. She did remember the guy. She'd been 15, stupid, trying to impress the older kids. It had lasted maybe 10 minutes in someone's bedroom, and she'd pushed it so far down in her memory that it felt like something that had happened to someone else. And now she found you, Harry said. The baby, she's not a baby anymore. 13, her name is Zoe. Saying the name out loud felt like stepping off a cliff. She wants to meet me. Her adoptive parents are supportive. They sent a follow-up email while I was driving here. Harry leaned back against the booth, ran a hand over his face. Does Charles know about any of this? No, nobody knows except my Aunt Valerie, and she died 3 years ago. Beatrice finally released the coffee cup, flexed her reddened fingers. I built this whole life, Harry. Good job, nice apartment, a fiancé who thinks I grew up middle class in Sacramento. I've been lying so long I almost believe it myself. So what are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? Beatrice could delete the emails, block the account, pretend this never happened. Marry Charles in 7 days, live in his renovated Victorian in Pacific Heights, have the 2.5 kids he'd mentioned wanting eventually. Keep being the version of herself she'd so carefully constructed. Or she could do the thing that terrified her most, she could tell the truth. The Morgans live in Fresno, Beatrice said quietly. They're suggesting a meeting at a neutral location, somewhere I'd be comfortable. Fresno, Harry's laugh was hollow, the place you couldn't wait to escape. I know how it sounds. Do you want to meet her? He asked, not what you think you should do, what do you actually want? No one had asked Beatrice what she wanted in a very long time. Charles made decisions and she agreed with them. Her boss assigned projects and she completed them. She'd become very good at being what other people needed. But sitting here in this rundown coffee shop that smelled like burnt toast and regret, across from the first person who'd ever really seen her, Beatrice let herself want something. Yes, she whispered, I want to meet my daughter. Harry nodded slowly like he'd expected that answer. Then you should probably tell your fiancé before you do anything else. Yeah, Beatrice checked her phone, 2 texts from Sutton about chair sash colors. One from Charles saying dinner was running long, nothing that couldn't wait until tomorrow. I will, first thing in the morning. She meant it when she said it, but as she drove back to the apartment she shared with Charles, Beatrice couldn't shake the feeling that the morning wouldn't come fast enough. That some doors once opened, refused to close again. Beatrice didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed next to Charles, listening to him breathe in that deep, unbothered way of people who'd never had to hide anything important. The ceiling fan spun lazy circles above them, and she counted rotations until the numbers stopped meaning anything. At 5:30, she gave up on sleep entirely. She made coffee in their pristine Kit Morgan with its marble countertops and wolf range that Charles had insisted on. Everything in this apartment was expensive and cold and chosen by someone else. Charles emerged from the bedroom at 6:15, already showered and half-dressed in his standard uniform of tailored slacks and a button-down. He kissed her forehead without really looking at her, then poured himself coffee into his travel mug. Morning, you're up early. He was scrolling through his phone, frowning at something. The Singapore people want to tour the Oakland property today. Can you meet the caterer about the appetizer situation? Sutton sent over 3 options. Charles, I need to talk to you about something. Can it wait until tonight? I'm slammed today. He grabbed his keys from the counter hook, still not making eye contact. No, it can't wait. Beatrice set down her coffee cup harder than she meant to. The sound made him finally look up. Okay, he pocketed his phone, gave her his attention in that complete, slightly unnerving way he had. What's wrong? Is it your dress? Because I told you whatever alterations you need, just handle it. I had a baby when I was 16. The words came out flat and simple like she was reading a grocery list. I gave her up for adoption. I never told you because I never told anyone, and now she found me through a DNA test and she wants to meet. The Kit Morgan went so quiet Beatrice could hear the refrigerator humming. Charles stared at her like she'd started speaking another language, his hand still halfway to his pocket. You had a baby, he said finally. Yes. At 16. Yes. And you're just telling me this now, 6 days before our wedding. His voice hadn't risen, but something dangerous had entered it. The tone he used with contractors who disappointed him. I didn't know she was looking for me. The DNA test, it was your idea, remember? You wanted to see if you had Italian ancestry for that Tuscany trip. Beatrice wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly freezing in their climate-controlled apartment. Her name is Zoe, she's 13. She lives in Fresno with her adoptive parents. Charles set down his coffee mug with deliberate care. Fresno, you told me you grew up in Sacramento. I lied. Clearly, he pulled out one of the Kit Morgan bar stools, sat down like his legs had stopped working properly. What else did you lie about? The college degree you don't actually have, your dead mom who's maybe alive somewhere. My mom really is dead, and I do have my degree. I just worked 3 jobs to pay for it instead of having parents who could help. The defensiveness rose in her throat like bile. I lied about where I came from because I was ashamed, Charles. I grew up in a trailer park with a mother who drank too much and couldn't keep a job. I wore Goodwill clothes and ate free lunch at school and shared a bedroom with my cousin for 6 months when we got evicted. So you constructed an entirely fake identity instead of just being honest. Charles rubbed his temples like he was getting a headache. Do you understand how this looks, what people will think when this comes out? What people will think, Beatrice repeated the words slowly, letting them settle. That's what you're worried about, not that I went through something traumatic as a teenager, not that I have a daughter out there who wants to know me. Of course I care about what you went through, but even as he said it, he was calculating. She could see it in his eyes, the same look he got when negotiating property deals. But we have 300 guests coming to this wedding. My business partners, my family, the mayor, for God's sake. And now you're telling me you have some secret child that's going to what? Show up, make a scene. She's 13 years old, Charles. She's not going to make a scene. You don't know that, you don't know anything about her. He stood up, started packing the length of the kit. Morgan, have you responded to her, to these people? Her parents, David and Lynn Morgan, they seem kind in their emails. I don't care if they're saints, I care about timing. Charles stopped packing, turned to face her directly. Here, what we're going to do. You're going to email them back, explain that you're getting married this week and you need time to process. Maybe in a few months after things settle down, we can figure out some kind of arrangement, something quiet, dignified. Beatrice felt something inside her chest crack open. I don't want to wait a few months. Well, you're going to have to. Charles's voice had gone hard now, the tone he used to end discussions. This wedding cost us $250,000, Beatrice. Do you have any idea how much my mother has invested in this? Not just money, her reputation, our reputation. I want to meet my daughter, she said it louder this time. And you will, eventually, after we're married and this whole thing can be managed properly. He grabbed his keys again, his messenger bag. I need to go, we'll talk about this tonight when we've both calmed down. I'm perfectly calm. You're clearly not thinking straight. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Beatrice, don't do anything dramatic. Don't respond to those emails, don't make any decisions, just let me handle this. The door closed behind him with a soft, expensive click. Beatrice stood in the kit. Morgan for a long time after he left. The coffee had gone cold in her cup. Outside the window, San Francisco was waking up, commuters flooding the streets, the city humming with purpose and motion. She picked up her phone and opened her email. The message from the Morgans was still there, patient and waiting. They'd suggested meeting at a restaurant in Fresno this weekend. Neutral territory, Zoe would be there if Beatrice wanted. No pressure, they'd written. We understand this is overwhelming. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Charles had told her to wait, to let him handle it, to think about the wedding, the guests, what people would say. But then she thought about Harry yesterday, asking her what she actually wanted, not what she should do, what she wanted. Beatrice started typing. Dear David and Lynn, thank you for reaching out. I would very much like to meet Zoe. This weekend works for me. Saturday afternoon, I know a place in Fresno, Denny's on Shaw Avenue. I know it's not fancy, but it was where I used to go when I needed to think. Would 2 p.m. work? I'll be driving up from San Francisco. And please tell Zoe that I've thought about her every single day for 13 years, that giving her up was the hardest thing I've ever done. And that I'm so grateful to you both for giving her the life I couldn't. Best, Beatrice. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she opened a new message and found Harry's number. She'd gotten it yesterday when he'd written it on a napkin at the coffee shop, just in case she needed to talk. Harry, I'm meeting her, Saturday at 2 p.m. in Fresno. I know this is insane and you don't owe me anything, but would you want to come? She's not yours, I know that, but you were there during that time in my life and I don't want to do this alone, and Charles isn't exactly being supportive. You can say no, I'll understand, B. She used the nickname deliberately this time. Beatrice was the person Charles wanted her to be. B was who she actually was. The response came back in less than a minute. I'll pick you up Friday night, we'll drive up together, you shouldn't face Fresno alone. H. Beatrice sat down on the cold Kit Morgan floor and cried for the first time in 3 years, not sad tears exactly, more like release. Like she'd been holding her breath underwater and finally broke the surface. 6 days until her wedding, and she just committed to something that might destroy it entirely. Sometimes the truth costs everything. If Beatrice's courage to face her past resonates with you, consider liking and subscribing to this channel. These stories about real choices and messy consequences don't tell themselves. Your support helps us keep sharing them. Harry's truck pulled up outside Beatrice's apartment building at exactly 6 p.m. on Friday. She told Charles she was going to a bachelorette spa weekend in Napa that Sutton had organized. He'd barely looked up from his laptop when she'd mentioned it, just waved her off with a reminder to be back by Sunday for the final rehearsal. The lie had come so easily it frightened her. She climbed into the passenger seat with her overnight bag, and Harry didn't say anything about the fact that she'd been crying. He just handed her a bottle of water and pulled away from the curb. They didn't talk much for the first hour. The silence between them was different from the silence with Charles. Charles's silences felt like tests she was always failing. Harry's silence just felt like companionship, two people sharing space without needing to fill it with noise. Traffic thinned out once they hit I-580, the Bay Area sprawl giving way to rolling hills going brown in the California drought. Beatrice watched the landscape change through the window, felt something in her chest loosen with every mile they put between her and the city. "You want to talk about it?" Harry asked finally, somewhere around Tracy. "About which part, the secret daughter or the fiancé who told me to let him handle it?" "Either both." He kept his eyes on the road, gave her space to answer or not answer. Beatrice twisted the engagement ring around her finger. She thought about taking it off before getting in the truck, but that felt too symbolic, too final. "Charles is a good man," she said because she needed to believe it. "He's stable, responsible. He's never once forgotten my birthday or shown up drunk or disappeared for 3 days without calling." Setting the bar real high there. "You know what I mean." Beatrice pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapped her arms around them. A position she never would have taken in Charles's Tesla with its cream leather seats. "He gives me security, a life my mom never could, that matters." "Does he love you?" Harry asked it quietly, like he already knew the answer. "He says he does." "That's not what I asked." Beatrice watched the sun starting to set over the hills, painting everything orange and gold. "I don't know, maybe he loves the version of me I show him. The competent one who wears the right clothes and knows which fork to use and doesn't have a past." "And what happens when he meets the version of you who does have a past?" Harry glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. "The one who grew up in the same kind of neighborhood I did, who ate food bank groceries and wore second-hand shoes." "I guess we're about to find out." Beatrice's phone buzzed in her purse. She ignored it, it had been buzzing all day. Sutton with last-minute details, Charles's mother with questions about the seating chart, her friend Melissa asking about the Napa spa. All of them believing a different version of her life. "Can I ask you something?" Beatrice said. "Why did you agree to come with me? You don't owe me anything, Harry. I disappeared on you without explanation. I never even said goodbye." Harry was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. They passed Modesto, the smell of cattle farms drifting through the vents. "You want the truth," he finally said. "Please." "Because when you left it broke something in me, not just my heart though, yeah, that too. But I couldn't understand how someone I thought I knew could just vanish." He adjusted his grip on the steering wheel. "For years I made up stories about why. Maybe you were in witness protection, maybe I'd done something terrible and didn't remember, maybe you never cared about me at all." "Harry." "Let me finish." He took a breath. "And then yesterday you showed up looking like $1,000,000 in your designer clothes and your perfect life, and I was ready to hate you. Ready to do my job and leave and never think about B from Fresno High again." The old nickname still hit differently when he said it. "But then you called me," Harry continued, "and you told me the truth, and suddenly all those years made sense. You weren't running from me. You were running from everything." he glanced at her again. So I'm here because maybe if I help you face the thing you've been running from, you can finally stop. Beatrice felt tears burning behind her eyes. I don't deserve your kindness. Probably not, but I'm giving it to you anyway. He took the exit for Highway 99. They were getting close now. Besides, I always wondered what happened to that scared girl I used to know. Turns out she's still in there. Just wearing really expensive shoes. That startled a laugh out of her. These are Jimmy Choo's, Charles bought them. Of course he did, Harry shook his head. Does he know what size shoe you actually wear, or does he just guess based on how you look? The question was sharper than he'd probably intended, but it landed. Charles had never bought her shoes that fit properly. He picked what he thought looked good and expected her to make them work. He tries, Beatrice said weakly. So does my truck, doesn't mean it's good at everything. They fell back into silence, but it felt heavier now. The lights of Fresno started appearing on the horizon and Beatrice felt her chest tightening. She hadn't been back here in 11 years. She'd driven past it on I-5 dozens of times, always looking the other way. Where are we staying? Harry asked. There's a Holiday Inn Express near the highway. I booked 2 rooms. Beatrice pulled out her phone, opened the confirmation email. Is that okay? 2 rooms is perfect. He said it without any weight, without making it weird. What time tomorrow? 2 p.m. at the Denny's on Shaw. The one where we used to go after your mom's bad nights, Harry nodded. I remember. Of course he did. Harry remembered everything. That was part of why she'd run. He'd seen too much, known too much, understood her in ways that terrified her 16-year-old self. They pulled into the Holiday Inn parking lot just after 8 p.m. The sky had gone dark and Fresno looked different at night, smaller than she remembered, less frightening. Harry grabbed both their bags before she could protest, carried them into the lobby like it was the most natural thing in the world. The desk clerk barely looked at them, just handed over key cards and pointed toward the elevators. You want to grab dinner? Harry asked as they stood in the hallway between their rooms. There's a taco truck down the street that's been there forever, best carne asada in the city. Beatrice thought about all the fancy restaurants Charles took her to, places where the menu had no prices and the servers spoke in whispers. She hadn't had taco truck food in years. Yeah, she said, that sounds perfect. They walked the 3 blocks in comfortable silence, and when Harry ordered for both of them without asking, because he still remembered she liked extra cilantro and no onions, Beatrice felt something shift. Not love exactly. Not romance, but recognition, the feeling of being known by someone who'd seen you at your worst and hadn't looked away. They ate sitting on the curb like they used to, and for just a moment Beatrice let herself be again. The girl who didn't have to perform, who didn't have to pretend, who could just exist. Tomorrow's going to be hard, Harry said, wadding up his foil wrapper. I know. You ready for it? Beatrice looked up at the Fresno sky, hazy with light pollution but still showing a few stubborn stars. Tomorrow she'd meet the daughter she'd held for 4 minutes 13 years ago. Tomorrow she'd face the biggest mistake and the biggest heartbreak of her life. No, she admitted, but I'm doing it anyway. Harry bumped his shoulder against hers. That's the Bee I remember. They walked back to the hotel and Beatrice fell asleep in her clothes on top of the covers, her phone buzzing with messages she didn't read. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not. Beatrice changed outfits 4 times Saturday morning. Every choice felt wrong. Too formal made her look like she was trying too hard. Too casual felt disrespectful. She finally settled on dark jeans and a simple blue sweater, then stared at herself in the hotel mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back. Harry knocked on her door at 1:30. You ready? I'm terrified. Good, that means you care. He held out his truck keys. You want to drive, might help with the nerves. Beatrice shook her head. If I'm behind the wheel, I might just keep driving past Denny's and never stop. The restaurant appeared too quickly. Beatrice spotted it from 2 blocks away, the familiar brown and yellow sign triggering memories she'd worked hard to bury. Late-night pancakes after closing shifts at the grocery store, coffee and pie when her mom was on a bender and she couldn't go home. The corner booth where she'd studied for the SATs, dreaming of a life bigger than Fresno. Harry pulled into the parking lot and killed the engine. Neither of them moved. "There's still time to back out," he said softly. "No, there is." Beatrice unbuckled her seatbelt with shaking hands. "I've been backing out of this for 13 years. They walked across the parking lot together, and Harry held the door open for her. The smell hit her immediately: coffee, maple syrup, that specific Denny's smell that existed nowhere else. A family sat in a booth near the window. Middle-aged Asian man, black woman with natural hair pulled into a bun, and between them, a girl with braces and nervous eyes. "Zoe." Beatrice's knees went liquid. Harry's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. The woman saw them first. She stood up, smiled in that cautious way people do when they're trying not to spook a wild animal. "Beatrice." "Yes, hi." Beatrice's voice came out barely above a whisper. "You must be Lynn." "I am. This is my husband David." The man stood too, extended his hand. "And this is Zoe." The girl didn't stand. She sat frozen in the booth, staring at Beatrice with an expression caught somewhere between curiosity and panic. She was beautiful: caramel skin, long dark hair in a ponytail, wearing a Golden State Warriors hoodie that was 2 sizes too big. She had Beatrice's nose, the exact same shape. "Hi Zoe," Beatrice managed. "Hi," the word came out small. "This is my friend Harry," Beatrice added, because she needed something to do with the horrible silence. We went to high school together." Harry gave a small wave, then had the wisdom to hang back slightly. This wasn't his moment. "Please sit," David gestured to the booth across from them. "We already ordered coffee. I hope that's okay." Beatrice slid into the booth, Harry beside her. A waitress appeared with 2 more mugs, filled them without asking, disappeared again. The coffee was terrible. Beatrice had forgotten how bad Denny's coffee was. Charles would have sent it back. "Thank you for coming," Lynn said. Her voice was warm, kind, everything a mother's voice should be. "We know this must be overwhelming." "It is." Beatrice wrapped both hands around the coffee mug. "But I wanted to be here. I needed to be here." Zoe still hadn't said anything beyond that initial hi. She was picking at her napkin, shredding it into tiny pieces. "Zoe, been pretty nervous too," David said gently. "She's wanted to do this for a while now. We did the DNA test last year, and when your name came up, she asked if we could reach out." "I'm glad you did." Beatrice forced herself to look directly at her daughter. "I've thought about you every day since you were born." "That's not just something people say, I really have." "Then why did you give me away?" Zoe's voice was sharp, challenging. Defensive in the way 13-year-olds were when they were trying not to cry. Lynn started to intervene, but Beatrice held up a hand. "No, it's okay, that's a fair question." She took a breath, chose her words carefully. "I was 16 years old, still in high school. My mom was an alcoholic who could barely take care of herself, let alone help me raise a baby. My dad wasn't in the picture. I was living on free lunch and wearing clothes from donation bins." Zoe's shredding intensified. "I held you for 4 minutes after you were born," Beatrice continued, surprised by how steady her voice had become. "And in those 4 minutes I loved you more than I'd ever loved anything. But I also knew I couldn't give you the life you deserved. I was a kid myself, scared and alone and completely unprepared. So you just gave up." Zoe's eyes were wet now. "I made the hardest choice I've ever made in my life." Beatrice felt her own tears starting. "I gave you to parents who could give you stability and love and everything I couldn't. Was it the right choice? I don't know, but it was the only choice I could live with at 16 years old." Harry's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once. "Zoe," Lynn said softly, "remember what we talked about how people can do hard things out of love." "I know." Zoe wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "I just thought when I met you I'd feel different, like I'd finally know where I came from or whatever." "And how do you feel?" Beatrice asked. "Confused, mad, also kind of glad." Zoe looked up at her fully for the first time. "You have my nose." Beatrice laughed through her tears. "You have my stubborn chin and apparently my attitude." "She definitely has that," David said with a small smile. "Zoe's got opinions about everything." "I get that from you?" Zoe asked Beatrice, something softening in her expression. Probably. I've never been good at keeping quiet when something bothers me. Beatrice realized how true that was. She'd spent years being quiet for Charles, for her job, for everyone except herself. What else do you want to know? You can ask me anything. Zoe thought about it, chewing her bottom lip. Do you have other kids? No, just you. Are you married? I'm supposed to get married next Saturday, actually. The words felt heavy saying them out loud here. Do you love him? Zoe asked, and the question was so direct, so honest that Beatrice couldn't deflect. I thought I did, now I'm not sure I know what love is supposed to feel like. Harry shifted beside her but didn't comment. That's sad, Zoe said matter-of-factly. You should probably figure that out before you marry him. You're probably right. Beatrice found herself smiling despite everything. You're pretty wise for 13. My moms say I'm an old soul. Zoe glanced at Lynn and David. They're pretty cool even when they're annoying. We try, Lynn said warmly. They talked for 2 more hours. Zoe told them about school, about her friends, about how she wanted to be a marine biologist and study great white sharks. Beatrice told stories about growing up in Fresno, about the good parts she'd forgotten existed. Harry mostly listened but occasionally added details Beatrice had overlooked, filling in pieces of a past she'd tried to erase. At 4 o'clock, David checked his watch. We should probably head out. Zoe has a soccer game tomorrow morning. Zoe's face fell. Already. We can do this again, Lynn said, if Beatrice is open to it. I am, absolutely. Beatrice looked at her daughter. If you want to. Zoe nodded, suddenly shy again. Yeah, that would be okay. They stood up from the booth, that awkward moment where nobody knew the proper goodbye. Then Zoe stepped forward and hugged Beatrice quickly, fiercely, before pulling away just as fast. Thank you for coming, she whispered. Beatrice couldn't speak, she just nodded. She watched them walk to their car, watched Zoe climb into the back seat, watched them drive away. Then she sat back down in the booth and put her head in her hands. Harry sat beside her, didn't say anything, just waited. I have to go back to San Francisco tomorrow, Beatrice said finally, to a wedding I don't want, to a man who told me to let him handle my own daughter. So don't go back. It's not that simple. Isn't it? Harry's voice was gentle but firm. You just met your kid, Bea, your kid who asked you point blank if you love the man you're marrying. What are you going to tell her next time? That you married him anyway because it was easier than being honest. Beatrice lifted her head, looked at him. What am I supposed to do? Just blow up my entire life? Maybe your entire life needs blowing up. He stood, held out his hand. Come on, let's go for a drive, clear your head before you make any decisions. She took his hand and let him pull her up. Beatrice stood outside Charles's building at 9 p.m. on Sunday, her suitcase at her feet, rehearsing words she'd practiced the entire drive back from Fresno. Harry had offered to come with her, but this was something she needed to do alone. The doorman recognized her, smiled, held the door. She took the elevator to the 8th floor, used her key to let herself into the apartment that had never quite felt like home. Charles was at the dining table, laptop open, surrounded by property reports. He looked up when she entered and his expression was unreadable. How was Napa? He asked flatly. I didn't go to Napa, Beatrice set her suitcase down. I went to Fresno to meet my daughter. Charles closed his laptop very slowly. We talked about this. I specifically asked you to wait. You told me to wait. I didn't agree to it. Beatrice pulled out the chair across from him but didn't sit. She needed to be able to leave quickly if necessary. Her name is Zoe. She's 13, smart, funny, a little angry at me, which is fair. Her parents are wonderful. They're everything I couldn't be at 16. Beatrice. She asked me if I loved you. The words came out stronger than she felt. My 13-year-old daughter, who I just met for the first time, looked me in the eye and asked if I loved the man I'm supposed to marry in 6 days. And I couldn't give her a straight answer. Charles stood up, moved around the table toward her. You're emotional. This whole situation has you confused. That's understandable, but we need to think rationally here. I am thinking rationally for the first time in years, actually. Beatrice took a step back, maintaining distance. Do you love me, Charles? Not the version of me you think you're getting. The real me, the girl from the trailer park who gave up a baby and lied about where she came from. That's not fair. Answer the question. Charles ran a hand through his hair, and for a moment he looked genuinely uncomfortable. Love is a partnership, it's about compatibility, shared goals, building something together, we have that. That's not what I asked. What do you want me to say? His frustration was showing now. That I'm madly, passionately in love with you. We're adults, Beatrice, we're past that kind of teenage fantasy. I'm 29 years old, Charles, not 70. Beatrice felt something crystallizing inside her chest. And you're right, we are compatible, we do share goals, but we don't love each other, we're just two people who look good together on paper. So what are you saying? You want to call off the wedding over some existential crisis brought on by a child you haven't seen in 13 years? The way he said a child, like Zoe, was just some abstract concept made Beatrice's decision final. She pulled the engagement ring off her finger. It came away easier than it had any right to. 4 carats of diamond that had always felt like a beautiful shackle. I'm saying I can't marry you. She set the ring on the dining table between them. I'm sorry, I know the deposits are non-refundable. I know your mother has already flown in from Boston. I know 300 people are expecting a wedding on Saturday. Beatrice, you're not thinking clearly. Charles didn't pick up the ring. Sleep on it, take a few days, we can postpone if you need more time. I don't need more time, I need to not marry you. She said it as kindly as she could, but there was no gentle way to detonate someone's life. You deserve someone who actually wants this, who wants the big house and the charity galas and the life you've built. But that's not me, I've been pretending to be that person but I'm not. So who are you? Charles's voice had gone cold now. The girl who runs back to her ex-boyfriend, who throws away everything we've built for some romantic fantasy. Harry's not. Beatrice stopped herself. This isn't about Harry, this is about me finally being honest about who I am and what I want. And what do you want? Beatrice thought about Zoe's question in the Denny's booth, about Harry asking her the same thing at the coffee shop. About spending so many years being what other people needed that she'd forgotten to ask herself. I want to know my daughter, she said. I want to stop being ashamed of where I came from. I want to wear comfortable shoes and eat at taco trucks and not worry about whether I'm using the right fork. She grabbed her suitcase handle. I want to be B again, not Beatrice, not the woman you wanted me to be, just me. Charles stared at her like she was a stranger. Maybe she was. If you walk out that door, we're done, completely. He picked up the ring, held it up. You understand that, no second chances. No coming back when you realize you made a mistake. I know. Beatrice headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I did try to love you, I really did. But I can't spend the rest of my life trying to be someone I'm not. She left before he could respond. Took the elevator down, walked past the doorman, stood on the San Francisco sidewalk with her suitcase and her life in pieces around her. Her phone rang. Harry. Hey, she answered. How'd it go? I gave the ring back, called off the wedding. I think I'm homeless now because this apartment was his. She laughed and it came out slightly hysterical. I just blew up my entire life. You got a place to stay tonight? Harry asked calmly, like she hadn't just announced a complete disaster. I'll get a hotel or something. Stay with me, I've got a place in Oakland. It's small and the neighborhood's not fancy, but it's yours if you need it. Beatrice closed her eyes, felt tears running down her face. I can't keep taking from you, Harry. You're not taking, I'm offering, there's a difference. She heard traffic noise on his end. Text me the address, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Okay, her voice cracked, thank you. Stop thanking me, friends help each other, that's what we do. Friends, the word felt both insufficient and exactly right. Harry picked her up in his truck, didn't ask questions, just loaded her suitcase in the back and drove. His apartment was in Temescal, a neighborhood Beatrice had driven through but never stopped in. The building was old but well-maintained, with murals on the sides and a community garden out front. It's not the Ritz, Harry said, unlocking the door to a small one-bedroom. It's perfect, and weirdly it was. Mismatched furniture, art on the walls that actually meant something, books everywhere. It felt lived in, real. You take the bedroom, I'll crash on the couch. He set her suitcase down. You hungry? I can order pizza. Pizza sounds amazing. Beatrice sat down on his couch, felt exhaustion hitting her all at once. They ate pizza straight from the box and watched some cooking show neither of them cared about. And for the first time in years, Beatrice felt like she could breathe. Her phone buzzed constantly. Sutton, Charles's mother, friends asking if the Napa trip was fun. She turned it off, set it face down on the coffee table. What happens now? Harry asked. I don't know. Beatrice pulled her knees to her chest. I need to find an apartment. Figure out how to explain this to everyone. Set up regular visits with Zoe if the Morgans are willing. They will be. You saw how Zoe looked at you. Yeah, Beatrice smiled despite everything. She's pretty incredible, isn't she? She is. Wonder where she gets that from. 6 months later, Beatrice had a studio apartment in Oakland with windows that didn't quite close right but let in good light. She saw Zoe every other weekend, sometimes in Fresno, sometimes bringing her to the Bay. They were still figuring each other out, still navigating the weirdness of their situation, but it was real. It was honest. Harry remained her friend, just her friend. They'd talked about the possibility of more, but both agreed they needed to figure out who they were as individuals first. Beatrice ran into Charles once, at a gallery opening she'd been invited to by accident. He was there with a woman who looked like a younger, blonder version of the person Beatrice had been pretending to be. He nodded politely, she nodded back. They were strangers who'd almost made a terrible mistake together. She wore comfortable shoes now, ate at taco trucks, stopped pretending she'd grown up anywhere but Fresno. And when Zoe asked her one Saturday afternoon, "Are you happy now?" Beatrice could finally answer honestly. Yeah, kiddo, I really am. Beatrice chose the complicated truth over the comfortable lie. She traded a mansion for a studio apartment, a perfect wedding for an uncertain future, performance for authenticity. Real freedom isn't about having everything, it's about being yourself with nothing to hide. If this story moved you, like and subscribe to this channel. Stories like these remind us that it's never too late to choose who we really are.